A story came up today in my newsfeed about two married women in New Jersey who would very much like to have a child and are having a long-running dispute with their insurance company in regards to what manner of treatments for infertility will and will not be covered. In the coverage and commentary that I've seen on this story so far, I'm not particularly happy with it. There are some critiques that I'd like to offer, but ultimately I just want to use this story as kind of a jumping-off point to talk about a broader issue. And that broader issue is, what is the difference between medical necessity and elective procedures and treatments? Now, in this story that I was reading, ultimately it turns out where this couple is going to be taking legal action against the state because they're unhappy with the way that infertility is defined legally. They basically say that the definition of infertility that the state commission has put forward is bias against non-heterosexual couples. It seems that the main point of contention is that the state and the insurance companies therefore require that infertility is only infertility if a couple has gone for, I believe, 2 years of time trying to conceive normally and being unable to do so. And of course here, at issue is the fact that in a lesbian couple, the attempting to conceive normally for 2 years, it doesn't fit the pattern. And their claim is that they cannot attempt to quote-unquote conceive normally because they are a rather atypical couple. Now, what's interesting is when you look at the details of the case, I think that there was a fair compromise reached. Essentially, the insurance company said that they weren't going to pay for initial efforts to bring about conception because the couple had not tried 2 years worth of regular insemination efforts because they're a lesbian couple. There's not a guy in the relationship. So I think what it turned out to be is that the couple paid for 3 cycles of artificial insemination on their own. And when those failed, then the couple with their doctor went to the insurance company and said, hey, we have made good faith efforts on our own to conceive and we haven't been able to. It appears as though at that point the insurance company did approve 4 cycles worth of in vitro fertilization. Now, I do think that it also needs to be noted that during the cycles of artificial insemination that the couple paid for on their own, there was an ectopic pregnancy that they ended up having to terminate. Now, as far as during the course of the in vitro fertilization, there is some confusion that I don't quite understand. From what I understand, there were 3 attempts with the first partner, and for the 4th, they attempted to go with the other partner. And from what I read, that there were 2 miscarriages. And this seems to be where the case is left off at now, where the couple is trying to continue efforts to conceive, and I think the insurance company is no longer attempting to help them. Now, this is of course where I get confused about the court case, because it seems like the insurance company did help with those 4 cycles of in vitro fertilization that resulted in 2 miscarriages. I clearly don't have all the details of the case, but from what I see, I don't see discrimination here. It looks like the insurance company did in fact pay for 4 cycles of in vitro fertilization. Whether or not the insurance company is living up to their end of the bargain or not, I can't really say anything about that for sure. But I don't seem to see evidence of discrimination here. Now, like I said, I intend this story to be kind of a jumping off point for a bigger conversation. And one of the things that a lot of people are talking about in this case is whether or not insurance should be covering infertility treatment for same-sex couples. And I guess that comes down to how you want to look at it. I want to start with the contract perspective. Now, the first thing is that health insurance is a contract that you have with an insurance company. You essentially you buy a policy from them. That's a contract. You sign it, they sign it, you send them a certain amount of money every month, and in return, they promise to pay for certain percentages of certain types of treatment. Now, we're not really talking about rights here. What we're talking about is contract law. We're talking about what is in the policy, what did you agree to, what did they agree to, and are they following that contract? And let's be honest here, there are a lot of people, matter of fact, I'm pretty sure just about everybody purchases their insurance and they really don't look through what's actually in the policy. When I hear people talking about shopping for insurance, what they're talking about is they're running numbers and saying, all right, this company is willing to give me coverage for this price, and this company is willing to give me for this price, and the only thing that they're looking at is the dollar figure. What they're completely neglecting is what are the terms of the coverage. Now, I think our second bigger issue here is the idea of what is medical treatment. There are some services that are provided by medical professionals that are purely elective. The easiest example that comes to mind is, of course, plastic surgery. But even that isn't necessarily cut and dry. Typically speaking, one of the most important things to consider, if something is considered medically necessary or not, is it restorative or is it desirable? I guess put in more simple terms, insurance is concerned with, is the treatment or procedure intended to make something work the way it's supposed to work, or to be the way it's supposed to be? For example, if my wife wants breast surgery to make herself look more attractive, that's purely optional, that's elective, that's plastic surgery. Now, had she been disfigured in a car accident, it would be reconstructive surgery because it's trying to bring them back to the way they were. Or if she were to be having back problems as a result of the weight of the chest, that could also be considered medically necessary because it's damaging her back. In the case of the same-sex couples, what they're saying is that it's not an infertility issue if they're not able to conceive children having gay sex, because gay sex never under normal circumstances conceives children. What they're saying is that when two women interact with each other sexually, there's no reason to believe that a child should be conceived. Therefore, we're not talking about an infertility issue. Now, in the case that we talked about earlier, well, it was an infertility issue because they did try the artificial insemination, which didn't work. It had the ectopic pregnancy. So therefore, this was infertility because what they should have done that should have worked didn't, and therefore it was a medical problem that necessitated medical intervention. Now, this brings us headlong, I guess, into the other thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is contraception. Now, perhaps not so much these days, but certainly in the past, there were several insurance carriers who would not pay for contraceptives, particularly birth control pills, because what they were saying is that the natural human body, the female body, is intended to become pregnant, and inhibiting this ability isn't medical treatment, it's the opposite of medical treatment. It prohibits the body from working the way the body is supposed to work. Now again, here we have to remember, just because something is provided by a medical professional does not necessarily make it healthcare. In my own work, when I treat people who have schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or depression, the insurance companies pay me because those are medical conditions. Whereas when I work with a couple for family therapy, the insurance companies by and large won't touch that because that's not a health problem, that's a you can't get along with people problem. That's an interpersonal or social dynamic problem, and the insurance company, the health insurance company, is not going to pay for that. Now, there are other programs that do have extended benefits that will in fact pay for family counseling and marriage therapy. And there are insurance programs that do have extended policies that will carry and cover contraception. And this is where we're getting back to that whole contract law thing. Ultimately, we go back to the old saying of you get what you pay for. And we have these policies, and we have to look at what these policies say. And when we're choosing policies, we have to be aware of what product we're buying, because that's what insurance is. It's a product, it's a policy, it's a contract. We have to read the contracts. If you're looking at insurance and you're shopping based on price only, and you pick the one that has the best price, don't be surprised when it has the fewer bells and whistles. Now, with the Affordable Care Act, are we getting to more homogeneous types of insurance policies? Yes. We're seeing more policies that have more things in common that are dictated by law for the way that they have to be and what has to be present. However, this isn't 100%. There still is deviation and difference between policies. So I guess this is why I get somewhat upset when people complain about what their insurance policy is and isn't covering, because I know full well that they didn't read the policy before they signed it. But again, let's also be honest. A vast majority of us get our insurance through our employers. We don't really have a choice that much of what policy we get. We might get to pick between one or two of them, but by and large, we don't really get to shop around for what's in the policy, what types of services do we find to be more important for our lives. For example, a company that buys insurance for its employees generally tries to go for a nice blanket coverage. Now, if you come from a family that has a significant history with, say, cancer, you might want to make sure that you shop around for a policy that has very good oncology coverage, and you might be willing to skimp for something else as long as that benefit is going to look like it's going to be the best odds for you in the long run. Just like if your family has a cardiac history, you might want to make sure that you buy a policy that has the best possible coverage of those special services. If you're a woman that thinks that you're going to be requiring contraceptives for a long period of time, you might benefit by looking for a policy that's going to cover those. buying a policy blind and then being shocked at what it covers and doesn't cover is kind of naive to me. Anyhow, that's all I have for right now. Again, thanks for listening.